You know that moment when you freeze after someone roasts you? Well, I do. So I researched for a consistent and reliable method to help you and me come up with better comebacks. Here's what I found. Each clever comeback breaks at least one of Grice's conversational maxims. These are basically the rules for efficient communication. So let's start with number 1, manners. For Grice, being mannered didn't mean being polite, it meant being clear and avoiding ambiguity. So how can you break it? Well, during a debate, Abraham Lincoln was accused of being two-faced. His reply, "If I had two faces, do you really think I'd be wearing this one?" Here Lincoln used wit and wordplay. You can do the same by following Victor Raskin's simple framework. You first need to repeat their insult, then you take a few words and you reference them in the second part with different meanings. Here's another example from Oscar Wilde. "Your wit is like a blunt pencil." That's true, my wit is like a blunt pencil, but it still has a point. Now these are more defensive comebacks. If you want to counterattack an insult with another insult, you can very easily use comparison. There are two templates that you can work with. Method A. Here you add the insult, then a domain, and then the best thing in that domain. Here's another example. If talking nonsense was a job, you would be a CEO. Method B. Here you first add a quality, and then you compare it to something that represents the opposite of that quality. Here's another example. You are as helpful as a window screen on a submarine. You can play around with these templates however you want. Now, as you can see, these types of comebacks are more family-friendly. So if you want to cut even deeper, you need to break another maxim. Number 2, relevance. Basically, this rule is all about staying on topic. Now, you could technically break it by randomly changing the subject, but that won't be clever nor funny. So what can you do? Let's take a look at the story of Diogenes of Sinope. You see, Diogenes was a cynic philosopher who believed that happiness comes from living in harmony with nature and rejecting all unnecessary desires. So he decided to live in a barrel with minimal clothes on. But one day he was visited by Alexander the Great himself. "I'm Alexander the Great King. Ask me any favor you wish." Diogenes, with a monotonous voice, responded, "Stand aside to stop blocking the sun." After leaving Sinope, the Great King said with admiration, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes." You see, Diogenes changed the topic by using the high-status reframe. Basically, you move the topic from whatever it was before to how unimportant the other person is to you. Now, Diogenes' example may have been a little bit subtle. So here's a clearer one from the Madman series.
What do I care? I got 1,000,000 of them. 1,000,000.
Good. I guess I'm lucky you work for me.
As a bonus, you can also use the understatement here. This is a rhetorical technique that deliberately downplays the situation. Basically, you treat them like a child, and you make your comebacks as friendly as possible. Here's an example. "I'm too smart for you." Right, but we talked about this. Confusing people isn't the same as being deep. Yet, you can ruin the whole comeback if you turn confrontational. So you have to use deadpan irony. Basically, this is a conversational technique used by most comedians where you say something ironic, but keep a completely serious, emotionless face and tone. Why is it so effective? Because the contrast between what you say and how you say it creates an incongruity that makes it really funny. Here's an example of the understatement used with deadpan irony.
"I like your plan, except it sucks, so let me do the plan, and that way it might be really good."
Number 3, quality. Basically, this maxim says that each sentence must be true. But you can't just lie, that wouldn't be funny. So what can you do? Well, during a debate, Lady Astor said to Winston Churchill, "If I were your wife, I would poison your coffee." His response, "Lady Astor, if I were your husband, I would drink it." Now, as you probably guessed, he wasn't actually going to drink the poisoned coffee. He used exaggeration. Let's say someone tells you this: "You probably didn't understand my argument. It was a bit too advanced." A normal answer would be something like this: "Actually, you didn't say anything relevant." But a clever one would be something like this. "Maybe, but you are the only person that manages to compress the most words into the smallest idea." Now, besides simple exaggeration, there is also antithesis. Basically, you use two parts that contradict each other. Here are some examples. "You talk a lot, but you say nothing. You're quick to speak, but slow to think." Now, if any of these methods seem a little bit complicated to you, the easiest and most effective way to create a clever comeback is by breaking number 4, quantity. This maxim says that you have to give the right amount of information, so your comebacks have to be the complete opposite. A, you give too much information. Here's an example from Ricky Gervais.
The whitest man I've ever met. I imagine naked you're nearly translucent. Like, like you can see your heart like one of those little baby fish.
This technique is especially good if you are going toe-to-toe with someone about physical appearance. B, you give too little information. Philip II, Alexander the Great's father, once sent a threatening letter to the leaders of Sparta. "You are advised to submit without further delay, for I bring my army into your land. I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city." The Spartan replied with just one word: if. Now, as a short recap, each clever comeback breaks at least one conversational maxim. To break manner, you have to use wordplay and comparison. To break relevance, use high-status reframe, treat them like a child, and keep your cool. If you want to break quality, exaggerate, or use antithesis. And to break the maxim of quantity, give them too little or too many details. Of course, you've probably noticed that some clever comebacks break more than one rule, so have fun with them. Yet in most cases, these situations escalate into full-on arguments. But don't worry, I got you, homie!